and by IBM security within the next 5 years, 100% of the companies are going to suffer one way or another, and 87% of the companies will suffer a secondary attack. So, the other question I want to ask, are you prepared? Do you know if you are prepared for it or not? Now, there is no time to lose. Every minute and every day, we're not doing something about it. We're not preparing for it. We're not thinking about it. This is going to cost us during crisis. Do you know how long it would take you to recover from a cyber crisis? Do you know what is a successful recovery means for you? Try to ask yourself. When we spoke to that company in Europe, we start understanding, like any other company that we're handling, Code Blue is running approximately 2 cyber crises a week, that they are dealing with potential damages that a lot of companies around the world are facing. Losing clients, destruction of the IT infrastructure, losing partners, reputation issues, financial issues, business impairment, and so on, and so on, and so on. Do you know what would be the financial effects on your organization when it happens? Do you know how many clients you're going to lose? Do you have enough reserves to handle a cyber crisis like that? It doesn't take a day or two. You know, according to IBM, the average is about 16 days. You know how much a cyber crisis costs just to fix these issues? And we're not talking about all the after effects of the business ramifications. So think about the financial aspects as well. Now, it's not only the organization that is going to suffer. Specific individuals within the organization, the C-levels and the executives, are not only responsible for the growth of the organization, they're also personally liable for what would happen to the organization during a cyber attack. Do you know if you are protected enough legally? Do you know if you did all the governance and regulation protocols in order to protect yourself? Does your legal department knows what they're doing? Now, after we recovered that company, and it took a record time of 7 days, believe me, around the clock of not sleeping, we thought everything would be okay. But now, what started to happen is, you know, oops, going backwards. You can see that it's not enough that you're taking care of what happened during the crisis. You don't have to take care of what happens afterwards, when the regulator is come knocking on your door, starting an investigation. People are losing, organizations are losing millions and millions of dollars in fines, and we're not talking about criminal liability. Okay, in the United States, I think he got, before he was going to the Supreme Court, 8 years in prison about what happened. Another question is, did you ever manage a cyber crisis? Anybody here have any experience in doing that before? And do you want to handle that the first time when it lands on your lap? Believe me, you need somebody that does it 1,000 times before, standing next to you, and having all the answers and the knowledge and the experience to help you come out of this situation. You need experts in all these fields of expertise. IT, OT, incident response, legal and forensic, communication, negotiations, reputation, social networks, strategic advisors, and all of them need to be in the same team. They cannot come from different places and then suddenly try to help you. You need them to work together. You need somebody to manage it. And this is exactly what Code Blue is doing. This is a cyber crisis management, like a military spec ops. Have you ever tried taking decisions during cyber crisis? Hundreds of decisions that you need to take in a short time under pressure. This is how it looks like. All these things have to be taken into consideration. If you didn't exercise that before, you have an issue. Prioritization. I believe me that I've been in enough rooms that I see many CEOs start screaming that their department is the most important one to the organization. Me first. So, who should be first? The one who screams the loudest? The tallest one? The strongest one? No. We need to prepare in advance and think what would be first and what would be next in advance. So when the time comes, we know exactly what we're doing. Now, we think about 7 elements that if we will be prepared for them, we can have good resilience, good resilience, and going back on track as soon as possible. Prepare for that, exercise, and have the best team next to you when it happens, and you going back on track sooner and with minimum damages. Now, if you don't have an answer to the questions I've asked you during the presentation, you need code blue. Thank you very much.
Are you okay? Okay. So thanks everyone that stayed until now. I'm the only one that stands between you and the cocktails back there, so I'll try to be very brief and to the point. Also, I decided that since I'm last, I don't want to spend too much time discussing the company, but actually presenting you with a use case of an attack that actually happened here in Mexico and see how it developed. But I still have to say something about the company. So my name is Ramel Boim, I'm the CEO of Signia. Signia, like all the other companies over here, were established by veterans of the cyber unit 8200. We have more than 180 people all around the world, from Australia to Mexico and anywhere in between. We have dealt with thousands of engagements until now, many of them in many different industries, from manufacturing, financial, media, telecom, almost anything that you can think of. And what we do in life is actually divided into 2. The first thing is incident response. You heard about this before, but one of the things that we do, we also get into the technical details, and this is something that I will show you later. And the second part of what we do is proactive activities that actually assist organizations. The unlucky organizations that get to our proactive services are those that were attacked and now trying to close the door after the horse went away. The lucky organizations hire us before in order to prepare them for that. So this is a bit about us, and what I want to show you now is to demonstrate to you how a cyber attack actually happens. So first, let's say something about the company. Now, I allowed myself to remove some details so that none of you will recognize that company. But this is a company, multinational company. It has offices here in Mexico, but also in other parts of the world. It's partially a trade in the New York Stock Exchange, and it has more than 10,000 employees. Now, this sounds like, what is it? Just nothing special. There's nothing special about this company. And this is something that you need to remember. Most of the companies that are attacked are not targeted by anyone. They are just there, vulnerable, and then someone takes into account that and just attacks them. So any company can be attacked. So how does it start? So it starts by simply phishing. Everyone here knows what phishing is. And this is emails that are sent to employees in the organization. And if you have an organization that has more than 3 people, probably one of them will click on the phishing email, regardless of how many awareness sessions you will do. So this is the most common attack infiltration method that exists, and it works on almost all organizations, including the most sophisticated ones. And after, what you see here is examples from the logs of the emails that were sent. Actually, the email was sent to many employees in the organization. One of them clicked, and then after it was clicked, The rest, you don't have to go into the technical details. Bottom line, clicked, some document opened, something happened, and then the attacker got communication from the network to his own servers. That happened, as you can see here, on March 15th. It took the attacker, and this is a developed organization. It's traded in the stock exchange. It's regulated by the US. And all this did not prevent the attacker from starting by that, and in 2 days, getting access to everything that he wanted in the organization. So now he has everything, and after 2 days, the attacker decided to attack. Now this attacker, this organization had 3 types of infrastructures that were important for the attacker. The first one is the backup infrastructure, Windows machines, and they had firmware devices with virtual machines. So what happened on the attack night? Something virtually, nobody can see that actually after, unless you investigate it behind, after things happen. So the beginning of the attack started by the attacker reconnaissancing and doing investigation to understand what kind of backups machines the organization has. And now, after a few hours, it started, as you see, around midday and ended around 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. The attacker now knows of any backup of that organization. What he will do with that, I'll show later. Then the attacker did something that is currently happening with almost any attack. He tampered with the security tools. So if you have an antivirus, it doesn't help you, because on the attack night, it won't stop the malware. If you have any other, not any, but many security tools, if they are not configured correctly, and many organizations do not configure their security tools correctly, the outcome is that when the attacker wants to attack, he would just disable them. So the first thing that attacker did after looking at the backups is to tamper the security tools. And the last thing that happened is, the attacker knew that there are servers, virtual servers in the organizations, and he just infiltrated one of them, took the root password, and now he has control over the entire infrastructure of the organization. The attack itself, by the way, these are real screenshots that are taken from a real report that we have done. I just blacked out things that might let you know who the client was. So the first thing the attack did is delete all the backups. Now, even if that only message comes out of this presentation, and that is to protect your backups, I earned my salary for today. But the first thing the attacker did, will delete all the backups. The outcome is naturally, if the organization doesn't have other types of backups, is that the organization cannot recover and will have to pay the ransom. The second is executing ransomware. There are many groups that do that. And as said before, this is like a business, so you just need to hire someone to lend you some tools and you can do that. And the third is to attack and encrypt the entire virtual machines of the organizations. And all this happened in something like 8 to 10 hours, that's it. And this is where we get the phone call if the organization was not protected. So after something like half a day, or a day at most, all the organization all the privileged accounts were taken, backups were removed, the security features were disabled, all the virtual servers were encrypted, and as well as hundreds of machines of the network. So the CISO that got this, or in this case it was the CIO that called us, he was just clueless. What should I do in this case? In addition to that, and that usually comes afterwards, he got at some point in time $10 million demand. Now the Bitcoin is down, so it's many, many Bitcoins, but back then it was a bit hum. But maybe the attackers should replace their payment methods, because Bitcoin is no longer safe if you read the news, especially now in the US. So anyway, this kind of ransom is large for any organization, and specifically for this kind of organization. So, and as mentioned before, this did not happen in this case, but in many, many other cases, the attacker actually takes data from the organization. So if you somehow overcome the encryption, you still, the attacker will probably try to leverage that data. This is something that you need to remember. This is one of the things that we do when we have an incident we investigate it. We actually look at what data was taken by the attacker, if we can find it, and usually we do. And that actually allows us to understand how much leverage the attacker has. So in many, many cases, the attacker, as we said, this is opportunistic attack that went because the organization was vulnerable. So even if data was taken, it was not necessarily a very important data. It's maybe some technical data that the attacker you would not pay for. But in some cases, it's very, very critical. So what questions are asked in such a situation? The first, is this a cyber event? If you don't have access to the backups, it might be just, you know, an IT issue. So this is the first, by the way, this is the first thing that happened to every CIO and CISO. No, this is not my problem, this is the IT issue. Someone there just, you know, mistook some configuration. Okay, now you understand that this is a cyber attack. Whom do you call? Do you call the lawyers? Do you call the law enforcement in that specific country? Do you call companies like us that do incident response? Do you call the insurance? Whom do you call? This is one of the things that were spoken before, but this is a question that if you did not prepare yourself, you ask yourself in the middle of the night with nobody to help you. The third is, there are many, many questions that you are being asked during a crisis. Do I remediate? That means, do I fix the network? Or do I even recover the network while knowing that the attacker is, you know, loose around in the organization? That's very dangerous, but sometimes it's necessary because the organization is down. Do you work in stealth mode? Namely that you're being very careful so the attacker will not know you that you are preparing things? How can you decide such a thing? Do you negotiate with the attacker? If the attacker is ransomware, we, by the way, recommend, and we do that also, we negotiate with the attacker. Don't leave it like that. If you don't negotiate with the attacker, we will not go away. If you negotiate, you will usually get some benefits out of that. You will get time. You may be able to reduce the cost. You may get some technical information, but this is a question. It's sometimes a moral question. So, and there are maybe millions of other questions. So how do we approach this when we encounter an incident? We start by putting up with a very robust methodology that goes in multiple directions at once. So the first thing that we do is we do what was discussed before, crisis management for the executives. We guide the executives in how they need to deal with the problem. Do they need legal help? Do they need some PR to their employees or the press or their customers? So this is, let's say, this is one effort that goes in parallel to all the rest. The second is containment. Containment means to take the attack and technically block the attacker from parts of the network that he did not reach to. The third, and all this is, as I said, done in parallel, we investigate. We understand it's critical to go into the details and understand how the attack took place. Otherwise, you cannot defend the network. The fourth is, as I discussed before, tactical negotiations. And then comes a very complex issue that is called remediation and recovery. When you get to such a situation, you need to know what to remediate and how to recover the network in a secure manner. And lastly, and very importantly, in all this, you must monitor the network to know if the attacker is trying to come back. What is he doing at this time? Are your activities actually influence the attacker? Sometimes you do something and the attacker just gets angry if he's emotional, or just gets more business if he's less emotional, and just does something even crazier. So all this is done in parallel during an attack. And by the way, incident response activity can take, depending on the organization, it can be 7 days, it can be 1 day, it can be 2 weeks, it can be a long process. But maybe the last question that I want to leave you with is, how do you prepare, prevent, detect, and respond next time? So this has happened, but now you're the unlucky guys that had the incident, or the lucky guys that prepared yourselves. How do you prepare? So we developed a methodology that goes throughout the organization and is divided into several areas. First, you need to know the organization. You need to understand what you have, what you don't have, what assets do you have in terms of security, in terms of IT. You need to prepare yourself, like was mentioned before, prepare policies and technical means to address a situation before it comes, simulate attacks and understand how you react, detect them, and lastly, be able to respond and recover. And we do this by various services, and I will not get into them. Everyone that wants to know more can approach Gustavo back there. He is our person in LATAM. He is here in Mexico City. And as I said before, we are working in Mexico for the last 7 years. We know the ecosystem very well and we'll be very glad to continue and assist you. And I want to thank again ICE for inviting us here and allowing us this opportunity. Thank you.
Gracias a todos por su atención. En este momento concluimos las presentaciones, pero el evento continúa. Nos va a dar mucho gusto que pasen al cóctel, donde estaremos todos disponibles, esperando tener la oportunidad de platicar con cada uno de ustedes. Buenas noches.
entrar, están las escaleras. Ah,
Gracias.